Idly ho there, neighbours. I hope everyone's well, and the life is treating you well. Sorry, it's been a while in coming in this. I did post a audio podcast the other day about making, audio soundscapes for your games, and I'll include a link in the show notes. But, I am here to talk to you about the Orcs of Thar, which is the 10th of the Gazetteers. I've been going through all of them, and finally got around to this one. Now, a few things. I don't remember Orcs of Thar from when I played in the Gazetteer setting before, the Mystara setting before. It is just not something that we used in the game, so it was a new experience to read it. I was like, oh, okay, well, this will be fun. Now, I wish I could say that this was awesome, but it wasn't. The thing with this particular Gazetteer is that they decided to go for humor. Humor in gaming is always tricky. Sometimes it works. For instance, Paranoia. Excellent, humorous concept to a game. It's designed for you to, have a humorous outcome. Some games are not presupposed with a humorous element, like D&D. And yet, they tried to make this a humorous product. I have a long-standing principle when reviewing anything. Disappointment is worse than bad. Is it, skillfully written? Sure. But as I'll go through here, you'll see that there are some elements that just made me cringe every time I saw them. And that's not really something you want to happen. So, yeah. That was a disappointment. Let me go ahead and get into the details. It is split up into two books in the PDF, and in the original print product, it was two different books too. One is the player book, and one is the DM book. And they've done this in some of the previous Gazetteers. Perfectly fine. Player's book includes rules for making monstrous humanoid characters. That's the goblins, kobolds, gnolls, hobgoblins, all of those guys. You could, it's the rules for playing those as a PC, which is a relatively new thing at this point in D&D, and, certainly worthy of note. But it does say in the write-up that this is for a humorous game. This is for a game where it's a change of pace from a serious game to being a silly game, is really what this is boiling down to, and the rules are written as such. Now, the player's book includes a lot of details, in-character knowledge of the world that they're talking about. It is the world above and the world below, which is actually, I think, the Broken Hills region, which is south of Galantry in the write-up, if I remember correctly. And it is sort of a winding, twisting canyon type place that beneath it has a giant cavern, which is, sort of along the lines of Underdark. Not quite, but sort of along the lines. And actually, their description of that was actually pretty good. I liked their description of it. There's a lava channel in the middle, and, water coming from rivers ending into these holes in the ground that make basically waterfalls onto the lava, which is pretty cool. There's an ancient city down there. It sounds like a really fascinating, physical description-wise, it sounds like a fascinating bit of terrain to work in. And I would definitely recommend that if people are picking this up, that they use that to its full extent. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff there. Now, for the silly, they talk about the different groups in that area. They talk about the history. Let me give you a sample of some of the names that are in that history and those groups. Chief Sitting Drool, Bugburbia, Gobliny, Hobgobland, the High Doge Cole, Constantinian Diosletus, the Supreme Court Judge. That's one name, by the way. Just gonna put that there. The South Nolastan, Troll Hatton, and of course the overall arcing horde of the Orcish Legion, Da Legion, D-U-H, Da Legion. Yeah. Every time I saw one of the deliberately silly bits, it made me cringe. Not gonna lie. It made me cringe every time. Now, the Guide to the Legion, Guide to Proper Behavior, in-character voices, they're all there. They included the Legion's Guide to Fungi, which actually is kind of a nice in-character bit, I guess. And they had an alternate character sheet. In the player's packet, that is also where, at least the PDF, is where you would find all the maps, the counters, and I'll get to the counters in a second. But yeah, as a physical package, it came with a lot of stuff stuffed in there. And the player's packet is the one that has that, which is interesting because it's listed as number 2 in the file order, when it probably should have been number 1, because you should read it first. You should read the player's book before you read the DM's book. Now, in the DM's book, they have the quote-unquote real history, like most of them, the Gazetteers. It does have some interesting details here. It's a little less silly, for at least the most part. They did talk about gnolls being formed from a crossing of gnomes and trolls by ancient Nithian experiment, and how they could make plenty of them with a single troll and just a supply of gnome blood. They have write-ups for the spellcasters in the humanoid world. Humanoid is what they wrote up as, the monstrous races. They called them humanoid. And that, again, that's the gnolls, the orcs, the goblins, hobgoblins, those guys. They're referred to as, in the text, as broadly the humanoid races. The spellcasting groups, they have shamans, which I expected, and Wiccas, which I didn't. But just the naming convention, calling them Wiccas, I can't imagine that went over well with some of the actual Wiccans in the world, but, whatever. Included the usual NPC write-ups. It included a set piece, sort of, here's a town that you can have your characters start out in or deal with. In this case, it's Oakmar, the Jewel of the Deep. The backstory on it's actually pretty interesting. Former Shadow Elf city. Shadow Elves are like Drow, I guess, for Mystara, and they were eventually run out because there was a volcanic incident that released a bunch of toxic gas into the city, and they basically fled to a different place even further down into the earth. The interesting part for that, I think, is that the reason that the volcanic event happened is because an immortal wanted a bunch of different followers. He wanted a larger sample of followers. So he drove all the Shadow Elves out and then opened it back up so that the humanoid races could come in, which is an interesting bit. There is a section on a sort of board game, which is where all those counters came from, called Orc Wars. Again, designed to be humorous. It's designed with humor from the ground up. And the rules are silly in that regard. After that, they have campaign advice, how to run a game like this. Again, the concentration's on the silly nature to them, but it does include some useful bits here and there. Lots of details about different aspects that you can use: tribal structure, demi races, which are sort of the half races, I guess. And there's an adventure towards the end called Requiem for the Orcs. Now, that is most of what you'll find in the book, the two books actually, and so, like I said at the top, this is not an awesome product, honestly. It is probably my least favorite Gazetteer so far. The deliberate humor was in contrast to what I expected. It did not have the same tone as the previous Gazetteers. And if it had been advertised as a humor product, if it had not been called Gazetteer, if it had been packaged as, an April Fool's kind of product, because they used to do these great April Fool's issues in Dragon Magazine, and they were great, they were funny. But you knew that it was an April Fool's issue. You weren't supposed to take it seriously. This one sort of straddled the line, and it didn't know where to begin or end. If they fully embraced the humor side of it, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. If they had not focused on the humor side of it, I probably would have enjoyed it more. It's that middle ground that it doesn't work, and it was disappointing. And that's annoying. I would say you don't need to pick this up. There are some useful bits that you can pull out of it, and it's cheap in PDF format, so it's certainly worth picking up for that. Just because, it's cheap and you want to be a completionist. And there is some useful bits in there. Their description of the world below is neat. I like the description. I think it's a good sort of, here's an underground kingdom alternative to Underdark. And I think that it works in that regard. But the sort of in-character stuff was annoying. It was annoying and not very helpful because it set a tone that would be in contrast to anything I would use at the table. Now, some people love humor in their gaming products, and they'll probably enjoy this. This is my personal opinion. Feel free to ignore it. Mileage may vary. I'm just saying. But I think that you know, as far as the Gazetteers goes, this one's probably my least favorite. It doesn't really work for me. Anyways, I will invariably like the next one better. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Have you picked this up? What do you think of it? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think I'm a crazy person? That's possible. I am probably a crazy person. My head is full of bad wiring, let me tell you. But yeah, I'd be interested if people had any personal thoughts or notions about this particular product. And I guess I will talk to you guys later. Subscribe, like, share with all the people, and I will try and be better about putting up episodes more often. Starting to find a rhythm again, and it's a process. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later again. Have a good day.